We have a series of 6 tutorials overall going on consecutive Saturdays, and we started off last week with an a really interesting introduction, and we're going to continue it, ramping up some of the challenges and some of the details. I'm delighted to bring together today some old voices, some well-known friends, and some new voices. And I will keep this quite short because I don't want to spend too much time. I'm introducing Carlos Bannon, who's been with us many times, and I showed his work last week in my lecture on his video on AI-generated video on the problems of AI in education. Carlos is based in Singapore, Singapore University of Technology and Design, which, in Singapore being a very hot country, has given us a snowy scene to cool us down. But great to have Carlos with us. Ila Colombo is also in a hot country in Dubai. Ila herself is a kind of Brazilian Italian. She is part of the dynamic duo in Dion with Ross Lovegrove. And has been doing some astonishing work. We'll hear more about it working with the new Banana software that has been produced. Some new voices and very welcome new voices from Turkey. The guys from Synthetic Architecture, Orang, so I'm getting the names right. Ozan and Pinar. I spent an incredible 2 weeks in their country over the summer, getting to know what an astonishingly beautiful place that is. So they're part of this of a group, Synthetic Architecture. We'd like to welcome them to their first tutorial. Greg Tate also is a newcomer, and I find his work really provocative and interesting, with a kind of cutting, critical edge to it. Greg is based in LA. He's a surfer, and you'll see some surfing images. And he's also been involved in teaching it himself. He's an architect working in LA at the moment. And finally, but least but not least, Angelica Ponzio, who is from Brazil. So we're really spanning the planet in this session. Who has been part of the Digital Futures team for some time and is managing the Portuguese language channel. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Carlos to kick things off. Carlos, welcome.
All right, thank you very much for, well, again, being back here. Digital Futures, it's been a while since last time, and a lot of things happens here. Every time I'm back and you invites me to be here, it's like, well, I mean, so many things to happen. It's like it's not a normal lecture, a normal checkup. It's like simply like, the thing is completely different, and I find really hard. I have a really hard time to really put the slides for today because I what to talk about, and what to say, what to share. Anyways, I tried to put something, and I was telling Neil, I was just, actually I just closed the window. I was coding just now, just uploading into the server the last version, and well, it doesn't work fully, but I will share what is the last thing I'm doing. So that's what I decided to do. Is like I'm gonna be working until here in Spain 4:05 because I'm in Spain now, and share what is the last thing I'm doing. So allow me to share screen and share updates. So let me just share with optimize video. All right. So I hope you can see the screen.
Yes. Yes.
So well, so this is the introduction to AI tutorial 2. And this is the image that was shared on Instagram. And this was actually, well, just 2 years ago. It's the same project with the AI models that we had by then. I was, yeah, I remember that night sharing updates. So basically, if you look back in time, not just 2 years ago, but a bit more back in time, just to give some context today, I'm going to talk about interfaces. So if you look at where we maybe were in 1992 with AutoCAD and all these basic interfaces that we had in our PCs, myself working with my computer in 1994, continuing to Photoshop in 1991, 1998 for Rhino. So there's been a progression between interface computational power and what we are able to think and design. So it's not just the power and what we can actually access to, but it's also a certain kind of like how we deal with that technology interface that determines our experience, and for creative users matters a lot. So if we look at 2022 GPT release, and the distance between maybe 40 years, like between AutoCAD and GPT now, it looks incredibly big, right? It's like 4 years, and we moved from tools that were actually doing exactly a command that we said to agents. We're moving from basically performing a specific task to something that can learn and adapt with us, and direct human control. We need to be there typing that key, and now it's like semi-autonomous or fully autonomous now with the agents. So yeah, moving definitely from tools to intelligence is something we're experiencing, and from assistance to pure collaboration as we progress on AI. So the interface is changing, and we never thought, probably while we're doing all these lines in AutoCAD in 1992, that we could be able to talk to a machine and understand not just our voice, but exactly our intent, and to materialize into realistic design. So looking at, where actually I did my first digital features session with Neil in 2022, we had mid-journey versus stable diffusion, right? That was the question. What do we do? You want to do control, or you want to do magic? So that was the question. We had basically A or B to choose, and then we had different ways to access that power. So with Midjourney, we had the magic. So now the interface became like this. At the beginning, it was just taking on the phone, but now we have a beautiful interface, very nicely designed, in order to produce these images. But then we want to have control. Then we have this. Then we need to go to CompUI, and then we have all these many wires connected. And I always remember, I want to mention him because when I was talking with Richard Hassel from Woha Architects in Singapore, I was running a workshop for the studio, and then suddenly the prompt window, the terminal appeared, and all the code was there. Like, hey, I don't want to see that. It's like, I don't want to see any line of code. I mean, I'm a designer. I don't want to be bothered by that. And I had kind of like, yeah, we don't want to see that. I know that probably is the way to get there, but as we design, probably is something that is in between and blocking a bit our progression in the design. So on the one thing I want to share is like the multimodality in which we are now. So we definitely have progressed from, the models that we had in 2020. This was just generated with GPT, collecting the models that we had. So we can see the LLMs, we can see the multimodal, we can see the image models. If you look at the image models here, it's a number of them that are, increasing the number of parameters. We look now at Gemini 2.5, and we have the multimodals here that are able to perform like vision and text tasks. So in the end, it's like the ecosystem really grew very much in the last few years. And now we have this multimodality that allows us to perform complex operations. It's not just probably reading the image as it is. It's more like interpreting and getting the context of where we are. So so we are getting into a bit of like a fragmentation, but I see it more of an orchestration. I mean, now we're having many models. We have many platforms, multiple things to try. Almost every week there's one new thing. So I mean, time is limited today, so I present here maybe just one very, very simple tutorial with these very advanced models that we have. We take it for granted, but it's very, very new, this kind of things. So the infant narratives that I'm working on. So infant narrative is basically, we have ideas, we have sketches in our mind. We want to materialize that idea. So typically we just go for sketchbook, we draw it, and then we render. But now we can actually go for the full story from day one, right? So if you go for it's a narrative, you can think of the place as it was. You can see the transformation, the construction means. You can see how people could use the space and activities that can happen. So you're going really with just a few lines, drawing your sketch of the idea of like a tree that creates their own space, and you have probably a space that can be used and activated. You can visualize that in a span of maybe 5 minutes. So that's where we are right now. So if also you have a certain idea of recycled concrete like stages, and you have a site like that, you can create opportunities to see how the impact of the construction could probably affect the built environment, the mechanical means that are needed, the scale of that. It's not just a few lines, but it really raises awareness on what we do as architects. That typically when we draw a line, we're not so 100% aware of the impact of our actions as designers, right? So that's one of the things that I'm very interested on, and as well, here for interior design, simple ideas and concepts, how they could be built, how they could be implemented, how the user could maybe also as well enjoy that space. Which kind of user are you actually designing for? And before, it was actually quite complicated to get to this point because you really need to spend time and resources. And now it's not about that. Now all these more accessory things that were not 100% important because we don't have the time or resources, now you can do it from day one, right? So I look at this as a space where we can weave and integrate seamlessly a hand sketch with our text prompts and ideas, and we combine that in a way that we can create space almost in a second, and then we can create spatial videos. We can move across the space, and as we move across the space, we get data, and we collect data that allows us to create a 3D point cloud, and the 3D point cloud allows us to make a 3D model that allows us to print the model into a prototype in our office. And then when we have the prototype, we can assess proportions, we can assess certain tectonic properties, and we can actually navigate that distance between just that simple sketch that we had like in our mind and an object we can actually be looking at without probably going to any physical basically sending to the printer. You're basically doing digitally 100%. And then maybe just one person can do that. We need a team to get there, right? So all these workflows are for me. I'm very interested in this, and I'm interested in this now. I don't know, in a few weeks where we'll be interested in. But I think for me, it's very important, and I'll see also a potential for narratives in our students, communicate also to clients. This is a space that could be renovated, but you can see people actually working on the renovation, working on what they need to do, cleaning, painting. And then the camera can move and can be a one-point perspective because you can do that with just a simple prompt, and you can apply a certain style. In this case, like driven by potential rich clients. And then this is done only with a few commands. So text to image creates a space. Context LoRa allows you to get the geometry and go to a very like clean, maybe white kind of geometry space. Point of view as well with context, you can do that. And also with Gemini 2.5, we can transfer style. And as well, you can work on point clouds. This is one single image in Midjourney. You can start looking at different points, changing the camera, and then allows you to collect enough data to create a very accurate 3D point cloud. As you can see here, this Rhino already. I moved to Rhino. So this gets you probably enough information to start creating a 3D model, have information about information about geometry, proportion, scale. Also, because you have figures of people, you can rescale to a true scale model. So yeah, this is kind of like changing the game and definitely helping us progress faster from what a simple idea is in the sketchbook to a build document to make something built. You can see here images of constructive processes that I'm really interested in as well. I think that's very insightful to see your designs being built, even they're not being built yet. Or even being, the opening day could also happen before it happens. You start seeing things that you start to see things beforehand, right? Even people taking selfies, the drone footage, of the space, during a time lapse as well, So, and also constructive details. This is quite amazing, right? I mean, now the context models that we have are able to interpret the geometry, and not just only one image, but images, not just one, a number of them, plus your context can guide the results to be pretty accurate. I wouldn't say it's like 100% like technically accurate, but it would be a good idea to start with, right? I mean, for me, it's like you're able to see this drawing that will take you a number of hours to put it together in a second. It definitely helps you make decisions and correct the wrong things. You say, well, this profile is now sitting on this plate here. Maybe it should be the thickness different. So those things you can do as a human, right? But at least you get something directly. So moving on to interfaces, for me, it's very, very important, the interface. I've been teaching in Parametric Academy and different universities, especially about that, about how we can work on narrowing the interface between the AI models and our things we do physically. These are paper models done by our students in Singapore in SUTD. The very first day they start architecture, they start doing this kind of things. They start bending paper, folding paper into space. We call it articulated landscapes. And with that, they immediately see the result using a very simple script in Stable Diffusion. But it's very insightful for them to connect this abstraction of folding with a reality that could be implemented on a site. So they're aware of the geographic conditions. They're aware of potential implications of the scale on the territory, sustainability, by looking at the real thing. So how big, how huge that slab would be, the thicknesses and so forth. So for me, it's very important to raise awareness, not just to create full representation of the model. So in Mexico, last year was an amazing opportunity teaching in UDEM, Universidad de Monterrey. I was invited to teach some AI ideas, and one of them was to work on land art architecture. So the students were actually working on generating scripts using processing, very simple scripts or Python. I suggested processing. Some people are more familiar with Python. And the idea was to vibe code, to go with directly prompting and create the script, create algorithms that could create the circle packing of the circles. And then with that, we can create kind of like, spaces like swimming pools, interconnected, and try to make sense, architectural sense of those geometries. But not just maybe architectural sense, could be landscape, land art sense as well. So the idea was to maybe generate very simple lines, very simple scripts that could originate. You see the second image here. The second one is actually the one created with Stable Diffusion, applying all the latest things that were done by them, all the LoRa's, all actually all the control nets for sure, and the API adapters. So everything was applied there to try to get there in the kind of sensitivity the students required. And the 3D printed model below was immediately generated with a script that gets the Z depth and generates the 3D map to be printed directly in the printer. So every single student, more than 150 students, were able to do that with their own laptops. Learning from almost scratch in about 8 weeks, they were able to do that. So that was really, really good to see. For me, it was a great experience to working with them. Amazing teaching team, was fantastic, delivering experience to everyone. And then we had this kind of like always conversation about comfy UI. It's like, well, we love it, but also we hate it at the same time. It's like all these connections, all these wires. I mean, I don't want to see that. I want to see something like exciting design. So that was always the challenge, how to get them to love this. But that probably not everybody likes, not even including myself. So I started thinking that was starting like 2 years ago as well, on interfaces that could be fluid, that could be instant interfaces. That was my idea. And then it's like, well, how about using processing? And processing by then, I was not like much into vibe coding because it wasn't that thing. I was coding it myself. So it's like, well, something very lightweight that we can code, so we can apply all the models real time. And that was what I did. I made this script in processing. This was like 100% human. And this was the result with the AI, very clear that the AI was doing the image, me as a human, I created the script, and I'm deciding what to do with that script. That was a very clear line. These are the images, and they got more complex as I implemented more real-time or even very quick response models that can translate the images almost in a few seconds. They can be rendered in the span of minutes. So there was a kind of an interface that could move elements, and real time in AI you have the translation and interpretation of the openings. So that was the progression. I was working from the clock, creating all this interface, introducing segmentation. The colors you can see here are related to made a 20K, a model that basically has some of the elements in real life tracked into colors and allows the model to understand what are these things: gray for a window, brown for a wall. So creating these villas that I call them the impossible villas because they were not actually feasible structurally, but it was a provocation. It's like, yeah, I want to show this. I want to provoke you. I want to get someone ranting on Instagram saying that is not standing because of AI. It's like, no, it's not because of AI. In this case, it's because of the human behind. So I enjoy that part. And I went a bit more full on with the upscalers that we try to get really, develop designs, even bringing more style. These are I'm currently here in my hometown, Alicante. So you can see here typical terrain materials of the zone that I was interested in. And also working with interfaces that allows you to probably maybe look at the latent space as a more of a fluid and structural space. So you can see on the left what I generate with the script, with processing, and you can see on the right what was the outcome working with stable diffusion by then. These hybrids between architecture, rocks, and landscape, applying style, integrated into natural context, and also going inside and imagining the atmosphere of living in those spaces. This was the first version on my desktop that was sitting here for a few months. I guess 7 months, I think, working on this. I made animations. I made all these transitions. I wasn't doing so much, but I was like, should I just put it out and start sharing it in a platform? Then I thought about, yeah, let's write an app. Now I think I have the aid of AI. I can go faster. So this was the app that I released in March this year, and I was happy because many people adopted it, but also I was unhappy because I found that it was a dead end. The models were getting too smart, and the interface was too still. So yeah, I got burned out. In 2015 April, I was like, yeah, I don't want to touch any line of code anymore. I'm done with that. I was doing all the things, but not coding. So I just retook it like maybe 1 month ago. I said, well, let's do Formas.ai multimodal. So that was the vision. And I want to show here a few things that will help us working on the tutorials that I shared before. So if we go to, it's not out yet. Actually, if you go to your Formas.ai, you're gonna see that it's only 2 days for release. All right, so it will take just a few days to get up, but this is how it looks. This is the interface that I created, and I want to show you around the options and the possibilities of this platform very quickly. And I want to try to achieve some of the things that I shared today. The main interface that we have is going to be a chat. So you have all the generations here you can do. You're going to have your projects here on the left. You're going to create images with text to images by using this picture. You can say a White House in the middle of a context. So this basically creates text to image, nothing new, but you can do it very quickly and allows you to create some visuals of what you want to do. So once you get your image, you can hear your White House in the middle of random context. You can decide what to do. So things you can do, for instance, you can refine the image, but you can actually just edit the image and then change the house to blue color. So it will change the house because it's using context models. So I'm integrating here in the platform probably more than 45 models together into one single platform. So that's the main point here, that we don't have one single model. We can actually use the one that we need in the moment that we want. So we will create the edited version of this house. But you have noticed here on the left, there's a number of studios that I call. And the studios are you can see here, the house. You can compare. It's basically keeping everything else, but the house is blue. Yeah, now we're used to these things, but still fascinates me. The one thing I can share is that we have the freeform studio, that one of the original formats. So I decided to make it open to a full canvas. You can draw your things. You can, of course, draw your formats, which we love, right? If you have used formats before during that waitlist phase, you're able to create almost anything you want. You can create your windows. You can draw kind of like just by dragging. By the way, this is a quite nice thing you can do as well. You can control drag. You can start creating like more of a flexible shapes. Those flexible shapes are able to be smoothened in a different geometry. So basically, well, I don't want to show you all the options, right? But the idea is that you're able to somehow create relatively simple shapes in a span of like relatively little time, right? So the idea that we have this house in a mountain. So I'm gonna put it like here. I'm gonna bring this to the front, and then I'm going to maybe copy this one here. I'm gonna draw kind of a simple sketch using a dark color here. So I'm gonna draw a simple path. Then I'm gonna put here one person walking, and the person can have a certain size. And then when you have one person, you can put the same. Let me just put it at a smaller scale. Okay, that's enough. And then you're gonna select the region you want to render, because you can decide that you can render this one here, and then just need to prompt, of course, like front view of a white house made of concrete in the middle of a clay mountain. Detail. So we just render this one here. So that will allow us to create this one, but you can continue working on more if you want to keep sketching. Yeah. I mean, the idea is to keep working. The main point here is to keep designers in a flow that, I basically, when I was working on this tool, this platform, this space, I was doing it because I need it. I'm so working with 20 tabs on my desktop, and I'm switching from one to another. Like, well, I need an interface for myself because I'm working on AI projects. I need to have a space, and maybe some people are experiencing the same issue, right? So, so yeah, the idea is to have this. So once you have your generation, you can actually check a bit of the fidelity of what you have gotten, which is typically quite good. You can keep updating, keep improving, but I think the quality works. So this is one of the things you can do. You can actually, let's say you want to refine this one here. You say I put like glass in the space here. You can actually draw another one here and put here the glass to the window and detail to the building. You can use the context mode, and it will understand the context and it will add it. So basically, you can keep adding regions, and the good thing is that it adds resolution to it, because it doesn't matter the resolution of your screen. You're setting something like this, you're getting 2 megapixels of resolution here. So another issue I want to experience with other platforms. And then just show one more thing. This is quite cool. You have here a number of things. You can, for instance, one thing I call it the fluid interfaces. You can see here the fluid interfaces. So the fluid interfaces is one thing you can do. You can actually prompt. Let's say I want to create an interface that designs a skyscraper defined by 5 stories. I can change the height. And then the interface is created. And once it's created, you can modify rotation. You can modify, I don't know, the height of the stories. You can make something like taller here. And maybe the story number 3 is like with like this. So once you have it, you're gonna put the prompt, right? You're gonna put like a white housing development in Miami with glass railings in the context of downtown, context to it, natural light, sunlight. So just generate this. Let me just, if I can get rid of the controls. Okay, here. I'm taking out my time. It's just 5 minutes. So I can generate the model as I'm doing here. So it will generate for that particular view. It will create a quick representation. So it's a relatively fast interface to put ideas into a prompt and to eventually have a translation into a certain like development here. Not 100% in this case super accurate, but you can actually get a bit more. The other one thing you can do, of course, is the 3D models. You can go for our winter cabin, and we can put the winter cabin here. So the winter cabin you can actually navigate and get wherever you want. And once you get, you're gonna center the camera and you're gonna put like your prompt. This is gonna be something simple. I put like polygonal cabin in middle of London using white material next to urban and sky. Then we can try to put a bit of the camera in a better position, something like this. Okay, that's good. And then just tell it to generate. So it will generate another one here. So basically, what I'm trying to basically summarize here is like, you have different modes. You have your canvas interface that you can create your simple shapes or complex shapes you want, because it is trained to understand simple sketches, like lines like this. It will also read. So here we have the piece here. So it's gonna be, like that. So if you want to, also this one thing that I wanted to test here, it was just implemented, which is the generative art. So the thing with generative art is combining LLMs. So you can actually say the circle packing thing, circle packing, circle system of integrating dynamics, like physics, that can collide and generates one circle per second of different sizes, starting from the center. A second, okay. And then you just write the code. So now it's writing the code, and the LLM is writing the code. So that will create the interface for the one here. So now we can see the interface. We have the circles growing. So that's cool. You can actually take, I need to do a snapshot because I was trying to do the real-time translation and didn't work, but you can take the snapshot if you want to. And with that, you can convert into a potential image. You can go to the chat if you want to, you can put in the chat. And here in the chat, you can use like, imagine turn these circles into water drops, make a precise image of water based on the circles. And then should be able to interpret this in multiple ways, as in like, you can take this one here, and you could also so this like water drops, and then it can from here, right? So it's gonna take kind of that interpretation. So the idea is to enable like many different ways, and this of course can be turned into a 3D model, and the 3D model can go back to the visualizer, and the visualizer, when you're here, you can react and say, well, I want to change the prompt. So the idea is that we can flow directly into different platforms. You can take this one here, and then when you have your image here, you can go and then you can sketch over, and then you can do your thing, right? You can start modifying this, and then you can go to your dragging, you're gonna select it and say, show the building in bad condition with cracks and scaffolding, placing the black lines by cracks. You're gonna use the context model. You're gonna generate. Context model understands more of the, situation that you're describing. So, I mean, that's what I'm working on right now. I think I exceeded my time. Sorry about that, 35 minutes. But I think it's quite exciting space because this is actually growing one module per day. So the idea is that I'm able to code like new models because I need more interfaces. I will need maybe a model that can do, connection of articulation of elements, and I can put it here. And because I have 45 models connected, I can pull out the one that works. So I think that for designers, for me, or at least for me, the way I think, it can really help use AI in a way, in your own way, and not in the way that the model actually tells you to work on, right? So that's for me kind of the this stage in which we are, maybe this at some point won't be useful as we move on, and the somehow the models get even smarter. That you don't need that interface. But I think for me, the the current force that I feel is that the interfaces are not at the level of the models. The models are fantastic, but the interfaces you end up chatting. So you need more. You need graphical interfaces. You need fluid interfaces. You need any way, any possible way that we can relate with those models will help us find something new about them. So I want to finish this one here. Hopefully, I want to scroll down to a better image, so it's not getting into a destroyed image finishing like the talk here. But yeah, I hope that was useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the platform in 2 days. I'm launching, so I'm working around the clock, try to get the platform ready. Almost backless, but there were a few more things coming up. So yeah, from Monday on, we'll be there. And thanks everyone for attending this presentation.
Thanks, Carlos. I'm constantly astonished by how you keep abreast of all these developments. I mean, you're complaining about it, but most people really cannot. I mean, you cannot keep abreast. I mean, it's an amazing world, and we are constantly being bombarded by these new models and making sense of them. That's the challenge. It is, I think, ultimately, and I know you did that video, which I think was fantastic on the problems of education, but it is at the end, it is a real challenge for education. How do we deal with this thing when, frankly, unless you're SUTD or at MIT, you're not likely to have the tutors who are going to be able to teach that thing. So that's why, in some senses, why this platform is so useful to kind of share that information across the globe. And thank you for your generosity and insights. I'm constantly amazed by what you get up to, Carlos. I don't know whether you sleep at all, but there's a kind of you have
Not much.
as my students in Nottingham used to say, you can sleep when you're dead. Anyway,
well, it's important to combine. But
yeah,
yep,
no, it's
please.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Yep.
Let's move on to
Sure.
Ila, who's also been involved in not generating, but so much as testing out certain models.
Yes.
And so, Ila, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm about
Yes.
to switch on both my audio and video.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much, Carlos and Neil. Actually, Carlos, your introduction makes my life so much easier because I'm currently out on a meeting here in Dubai,
Awesome.
and I was rushed during this weekend today to put together my slides. So basically, Carlos explained most of the workflows, which makes everything easier. Brief introduction on myself. I'm co-founder of Beyond, which is a Dubai-based innovation practice. We work across design and architecture, philanthropy, and ethical reasoning around artificial intelligence and its impact on creative industries, the broader creative industries. But also very much experimenting with new methodologies in 3D printing architecture, in AI for architecture, and also new materials and technologies and everything in between. So we're fully interdisciplinary. I'm also co-director of Love Girl Studio. And on my own personal side, I also am an artist working with generative art and new mediums. So I wear many hats. Here in Dubai, particularly aside Beyond, I sit on the advisory board at AUD for the architectural faculty. Mostly I bring all the AI insights into the university. And I also collaborate heavily with Dubai Future Foundation, which you can see here in the central. I was last year contributing to this landmark report on the impact of AI within creativity. Those are some of visuals planning my work. So because my expertise and background is very much interdisciplinary, I find very natural for me all of the new multimodal AI workflows that you see. Also, they were very well explained by Carlos. I apologize if you hear any background noise. I'm outdoors in a public space and they're moving tables. But yeah, so basically anything that comes from art, also gaming. I'm a former gamer, I'm a former athlete. work heavily with the parametric principles, the broader creativity, art history background. And I merge all of these naturally within my work. So whether it's architecture or product design or art, for me, the lines are blurring. And one project always influences the next that I do in another discipline or within another vertical. So when I show those slides, for me, I see coherence across all of the works, and I don't necessarily divide them or box them or silo them. I love to experiment with AI. I believe one of the most important factors of experimenting with AI is basically gathering, putting together, and growing your own sensitivity and awareness. Carlos also mentioned awareness a lot of the time, and that's very much such a key word, especially when it comes to working with AI. You need to build your own awareness, and I'm going to explain later why it's so instrumental. This awareness of the models, sensitivity towards the models, but also growing your own critical thinking, lateral thinking in relation to the models. There are several AI models available to us, and each is better for a very particular situation or a very particular kind of framework and workflow. And having an overview, almost like a dragonfly 360 degrees overview of all of them and the landscape that is available to us is basically what I believe is the most advantageous position for an architect or a creative these days. What you see here, particularly on the upper right corner, is some of the very early experimentation that we did within Logro Studio, which was a little bit early LoRa model training or coherence and context awareness within our own in-house or publicly available models. But we were trying basically to use different influences, whether they were digital, natural, or analog, or retrospective and futurespective, basically to influence all of the work. So especially when it comes to design principles, like in this particular is netification, but as having different LoRa models trained on different kind of sources, all talking about the same subjects and then colliding into one particular framework is very instrumental to then arrive to things that are like fashion clothing, for example, that have a netified kind of lattice structure, and that reflects also on previous work, but also natural references and so on and so forth. What I'm going to talk today mostly is some of the work that we do here at Beyond. I'm not going to go into the specifics because Carlos has done that very extensively, and I'm grateful for that. But basically, we sit at an unprecedented time in history where basically you can not only visualize and experience and do pretty much almost accurate schematic design way before, and certainly considerably in advance compared to traditional timelines. So some of the projects that I'm working here in Dubai, for example, allow to cut almost by 2 years, if you compare to traditional kind of chronologies, by 2 years, what will be the end product of an architecture. So we start sometimes with simple natural language or just even simple numeric data, where it's maybe just a piece of land. We know the rough dimensionality of the piece of land or the site, and we start implementing all that we know in terms of distributing the numbers and rationalizing the numbers between built environment and non-built environment, and then distributing those assets within the site, and then taking little sketches, three-dimensionalizing the sketches, visualizing them as schematic designs, all the way to 3D and walk through bird eye views and aerials and super high-res final renderings. So I have goosebumps genuinely when I say this, because that is the great opportunity and possibility of today. So basically you take an architecture workflow and you have it within just a few weeks. And this helps liaising with clients in ways they could not believe possible. So there are obviously good sides and bad sides. The good sides are everything that I just described, and a much more close relationship with clients, because they feel participating more within the process naturally, because obviously they can influence an architectural design much earlier on and be part of that vision. The bad sides is that obviously the AEC field might be disrupted, because now potentially all of the parties within that bubble can do this on their own if they arrive to have their own in-house team or third party. So unless architects are able to leverage this and offer this, potentially the conventional architectural practices as we've known them so far until now may disappear, because all of those opportunities are equally available to all players within the industry, I would say. What you see here are some early examples of workflows done with Google Flash 2.5. So that particular awareness of AI models was able to put me in a very interesting position on a latest project that we've done through Lovecraft Studio with Google DeepMind. I can't say further about this because it hasn't been fully released yet. But basically, I would say since summer of 2022, working nonstop and non-sleeping, as Carlos was saying, and being aware of all of the models, I gather a pretty extensive knowledge of what you can do with models. Not only that, I gather specialties, expertise on the models. Like I knew what I would use Midjourney for. I knew what I would use ChatGPT or LLMs for. I knew what I would use Crea and everything within the Crea dashboard for, and so on and so forth. Luma and Pika and all of the video softwares available as well. And of course, I've been experimenting with Gemini, particularly Google 2.5 Flash since the beginning. And I was among, I would say, the early birds adopters that would use 2.5 Flash to push it, to visualize different views, angles, or visualization styles, or special construct of one particular project. So when it comes to working with models, I would say I would put a lot of emphasis also on language. The only thing that I can say about the Google DeepMind project is that since early on, because all of the models, they are based on very different training data, therefore they have different translation, say, or meanings of wording and lexicon being used to tag or instrumentally used to train the data. So it's you have the visual data being one pool where models are based on, but you also have the language pool, which influences how a model might behave. So working with Google, I identified a pretty substantial gap in their model in understanding conventional and expertise architectural language. So basically, the average or your normal prompting on Midjourney will not work as well with their model, because while Midjourney seems to be very familiar with architectural lexicon and highly detailed, high resolution visuals for particularly architecture and design, although obviously it does much more than that, the Google models seem to be lacking that and being considered behind. So basically, when I did this particular project with them, I faced the difficulties that I could not use my normal prompting style or my normal prompting language, not even my average working or description powers. So I had to rethink entirely how would I approach this particular project. And I worked for several weeks in decoding. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Arrival, when basically aliens arrive on Earth and they have very beautiful fluid liquid kind of ink symbols. And the human counterparts had to understand what they were trying to communicate, and they had to do massive, huge amounts of work trying to decode what those symbols would refer to and how to interpret them. Well, similarly, I had to find my own way in a very unusual and lateral manner to try to arrive to the same output. So imagine this is the architecture I want to describe. I would say organic architecture, several buildings within a master plan with a central water feature or other things, layered. This is how I would normally describe it. Maybe I would use other lexicon, but those were not understood. So basically, what it came out is that I had to use very unconventional and non-direct vocabulary. And then I created my own dictionary, I would say. I created my own dictionary and tried to understand how many association I could have per word. And then I listed them and tag them, and also put a scoring system that allow me to put together different words that if I show you the prompt once the final project will be released, you would think this is insane, because maybe it's a random construct of words that sometimes don't even consequentially make any sense. But that particular construct of words arrive to the same result. Anyway, it's been a very fascinating journey. And because of that, and because of this particular project and pushing the visualization through different view angles, through different instrumental visualization styles for design and architecture, Google was then able to take the vocabulary, reframe the vocabulary, embed what the right lexicon should be, and then eventually push it to be the nano banana that you have available now, which is ACAT Google 2.5 Flash, basically, which is an enormous step up. I don't know if you guys used it, but what basically Google Nano Banana allows you to do today is to have incredible reliability, consistency, and spatial awareness throughout different visual styles and different views. So I started, for this particular example, I started with one simple view of what looks like a ground level restaurant. I then went on the upper floor. From the upper floor, I did schematic designs. From the schematic designs, I did what looks like a 3D wireframe, and then the full zoning of what is this spatial architecture with a little bit of a master plan and the section. This is done now within a handful of minutes because of all of that retrospective work that we've done. And what's interesting, and I highlighted this to the Google team as well, is that now you have automatic titling basically of those slides by the model to be quite accurate. So view isometric CAD wireframe, project biomorphic research facility. This was not available at all. But now the model is so accurate that it can even tell you almost exactly what it is from an architectural point of view. So this is amazing. And again, we started in February, March this year. It's now almost second half of September. You can get a sense of what kind of leapfrog those models are capable of doing when good teams and good collaborations are in place. So basically, we're about to face the biggest exponential growth within this architectural design and broader creative field that we humankind have ever seen, which is very exciting. This is another example. I've shown this before in my talks, but this is again very basic, but it gives a sense of how much interesting it is to work with both LLMs and visual models. So assuming I have a site coming from a client, I only know the overall objectives. This particular project is an hospitality project. I know the dimensionality of the site, and that's it. I know roughly how many occupants they would like to have within the resort. I know roughly how much they would want to allocate to the back of house, which is where you would put naturally the logistics or infrastructure. Then I have ongoing, this is just a little screenshot, but I have ongoing conversation with an LLM. So I just reason it all out. I would ask question. I would say how we can approach this. I would say, how can we structure it to be intelligent? How can we be different? What would be the most sense? How we can allocate non-built versus built, and so on and so forth. Then I structure, this is Claude by Anthropic. Then I would do mermaid diagrams to subdivide and schematically lay out all of this. I would show it to the client. I would discuss. This is all having conversation with the client as well. Then I would code within Claude as well to create interactive artifacts. On Claude, they're called artifacts, but those are meant to be interactive artifacts where we can then distribute, move the assets within a site, which is pretty squarish. And then start what looks like a cellular mitosis, start subdividing and allocating those areas, which are meant to be volumetric, but we know we have four-bedroom villas, three-bedroom villas, we have the main lodge, and so on and so forth. And then we literally take that very simplistic rudimentary sketch, I would call, or a schematic diagram, and we can visualize it instantly. Like instantly take a rough whatever, and then visualize it as a bird eye view. Obviously not the most exciting bird eye view, but now I can take that bird eye view and go through several interaction and say the client wants a bamboo high quality resort, which is eco-friendly and also have solar system and so on. I can get as far as the final product, basically, just from that framework. And then from this visual, which I'm not showing here, but I could move from my aerial bird eye view all the way to ground level view and start designing the indoor reception, the rooms, the suites, the spa, and so on and so forth. And the workflow would look exactly like what Carlos shown to us. You can sketch, you can visualize, you can have it 3D, you can have it a point cloud, you can 3D print it endlessly. So in just a handful of weeks, you go from just a rough composition of words of an idea to the final product. And that can heavily influence how the architects then go and do all of the schematic design and take all their time as they want to do that. This is another example. We start with a very artistic sketch. Obviously, I'm not showing the back end or the behind the house of what went through in the workflows. Again, it would look like similar to what Carlos has shown, but how can we translate a very artistic sketch all the way to what would look like an architecture and do animations and videos? So this is a preview, for example, of some of the works they were doing for clients these days. We go again from a rough sketch all the way to a marketing campaign, basically. The level of detailing and narrative we can now influence and construct and visualize and think of is simply fantastic, all the way to model characterization and reliability and designing the details as we want them without even touching anything in 3D. This is a little bit of a schematic overview. Obviously, it's not finished. I constantly refine how I define my work, but basically, I wouldn't define it as just a machine or just a human. Obviously, we know it's a human AI collaborative workflow, but it's also a non-linear journey. It's always a back and forth, it's a loop, it's a cycle, it's a Ouroboros, to quote the allegoric symbol of time from the ancient Greeks. Basically, you both human intuition or any kind of manual work to the prompt formulation and the AI interaction, to evaluation constantly, every step of the way, you have an evaluation system, whether it's your personal arbitrary or something that is instructed by any kind of specifications or law enforcement or whatever is the municipality giving as regulations. And quality assessment from a design point of view and aesthetics, obviously that will come as a collaborative work with the clients, and then manual work refining those. So to give you an example, again, Carlos shown this, we take a rough rendering or a rough visualization, we go all the way down to deciding the light switches that they want on the wall at the very end. So the level of detailing and refining and putting actual furniture or actual people or actual feature they want, we can customize it endlessly and refine it to the minus, to the smallest detail. So it's back and forth, never ending, of course, until it ends, but considerably compressed timeline. And in here, I miss point B because I'm still refining the lexicon, but self-awareness. So again, self-awareness of the task and the goals. I would say one of the biggest struggles for teams these days is identifying what makes sense to do with AI and what doesn't make sense to do with AI. That's still a struggle, both at educational situations or settings and professional settings. I would say that's why it's so important for you to interact with AI models, because only by having that kind of sensitivity, you realize where your leverage is as a human or as a machine, when it's time to depart from the machine and doing analog offline or digitally, but not with the generative methods, and when to use the generative. So then doing your own decomposition for the prompting, have self-awareness on the applicability and impact, and of course, have a well-adjusted confidence in completing the task yourselves versus the Gen AI, which is a repetition of what I said. Sometimes I struggle when I see teams not seeing the adjacent possible working with AI. This is the terminology that I'm working on also for the scripted text about how to work with AI. But when you face a roadblock, for example, my experience with the Google model, I could have just said, your model is not good compared to the other models. We need to start again. This collaboration can't go further, yada, yada, yada. because I could see an adjacent possible, I could see laterally. I could see that actually I take a step back, identify that this normal prompting method is not working. What can I do next, or what can I do differently that gets me to the same result? So it takes a lot of creativity and deep curiosity working with AI, and I think that's why it's still so hard at times to transfer this knowledge or transfer this capability of being successful working with AI, or being so advanced working with AI. You need to be extremely creative and extremely curious of what could be possible, even if the first direct method didn't work. And then obviously having this metacognitive flexibility to adapt your workflow, which is a little bit of a summary of what I just said. And that's me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Ila. That was, I mean, in a way, I think what we're seeing and it is the emergence of new forms of, let's say, design practice or architectural practice. There needs to be maybe a new terminology invented for it to describe what's going on. But one of the sessions we have in, I think, 3 sessions time is a session on new architectural practices, where we've got Tim Fu, who's has been producing an AI-based architectural practice, and then Mariana Capochera, who is like you, well, okay, she's developed a kind of an AR-based thing, but relying increasingly on the metaverse, or on AI as a technology, and we're seeing the emergence of new forms of practice. And I think Dion is precisely a variation on that. So thank you so much. That was hugely interesting. So we're going to now move on to Ozan and Pinar in Istanbul, I think. And it's great to have you on board for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. And then Carlos and Ila's presentations were, mind-bending, actually. So let me share the presentation now. Yeah, actually, what you said just 10 seconds ago, we think we are in new territories, and we need to find our way through AI, and we fully embrace AI right now. And like, it reflects our practice in synthetic architecture. We have fully embraced AI as part of our design process, making it an essential partner in every drawing, every exploration, everything we do. We understand that, like, in architecture, actually, AI can raise concerns, and not everyone want to share that they are using AI and help using the AI's help in their design process, because I think some fear it makes work appear too easy or lacking effort. But in reality, when used with intention, when used with the experience embedded, AI amplifies creativity, speeds up exploration, and help us communicate our vision more clearly and persuade people more, actually. Like, this is what we're using to understand and talk to each other, and also understand what we are in right now. I just made this through 3 phases of design. It's actually more complicated than that, maybe, but like the pre-CAD, the CAD, and the right now AI enhanced areas has some distinctions on how we design and how we look at architecture. Each period brings its own character. Like, pre-CAD gives us permanence through hand drawings and deep labor and a certain slowness that may be sometimes good for design. CAD accelerated speed and precision, but also brought rigidity sometimes. Permanence became fixed, and actually workflows sometimes get heavier that it goes way beyond the design intents. And then, but I think what we want to get to the point in AI, I don't say we are in that, I don't say AI is actually getting that all these hybrid, fluid, instant low labor and curatorial qualities yet, but it's getting to that point and it's meant to be used at this level of integration. But it's not simply about AI being better. Some aspects are stronger, others weaker, and often AI merges qualities from both previous eras and previous like different disciplines maybe. As like practitioners working in this last stage, we see ourselves as translators somehow, taking the lesson of the past, the discipline of the cat, and the fluid power of AI to shape something new, something we are seeing all together. So this is kind of the AI ecosystem we are using. Here we map the platforms we use, tools for the text. As Carlos said before, there are 20 or more applications and things around, like a piece of paper that you're taking notes and stuff everywhere. And then we just trying to make a connection and make a network of a storytelling system from that. Like we use it for storytelling, illustration, research, simulation, budgeting for our company, client relations, and everything. So we deliberately choose this way of showing it as a network. For us, connections and relationships are always essential in architecture. And the same applies to our tools. It's not about using one in isolation, but about how they link together, how they inform each other, and how they expand what we can do as designers. This ecosystem is both like a representation of our practice and a living structure we continue to refine. This is emphasizing one of the most important roles of AI playing in our process, persuasion and making people believe in what we do. Design is never just about creating forms. It's about explaining and defending those ideas to clients, collaborators, and the public. AI strengthens this by giving us the ability to produce a wide range of illustrations, renders, and variations. And this makes us persuade people more fast and more comfortably. With this expanded evidence, we can support our arguments with clarity. Instead of presenting few images, we can show multiple perspectives, scenarios, and outcomes. This doesn't just make the design more convincing, it makes it more resilient to critique. This is a chart that is also makes us shocking for us. Actually, we worked in architecture for years right now, like decades, and then it's usually the conversion rate is 10 to 15% in most of the case. But beginning of the to 2025. This slide like showing the client relations, but who we discovered through Instagram, like mostly Instagram, like our clients are coming to us from Instagram. And then after this discovery, we have prepared proposals and negotiation. And when we enter to the negotiation in 4 big projects we have right now working on, it's all created with winning the bids. This is exciting. Like we are a very new office, and then I think we believe this success comes from faster, clearer presentations and the use of innovative methods to make our proposals highly persuasive. And I think when people approach us, they already know about our practice and how we do things. So this is a really moving point for them, and then most of them ends up in winning the proposal. So this is how automation and AI enhanced systems reshape craft also. We can now move quickly from idea to images to prototype and finally to an object. In this, in this image line, you can see how we start with the base of the idea, and then we very fast make an object out of that, and then this object needs to be approved and then needs to be checked for production, and then it becomes something applicable in the picture in the middle, and then it's still rendering, but it's AI enhanced rendering. And in the fourth picture you can see the prototype is on, and the fifth picture the final product finished and shown in Melbourne Design Week. This is before AI. This is somehow very hard, like convincing, persuading people to understand our idea fast and moving forward, taking more time, and then it was hard. But in this process, we really enjoyed the other aspects of the design without thinking about convincing point to be the largest, anxiety for the design. This is like we really like the simulation with the Autodesk Forma, but there are also other AI enhanced simulation programs out there right now, because we don't believe that this is like, okay, this is showing all the sun shading, daylight, the noise control and everything can be seen here, and you can understand where the problems are. But we just want to use it beforehand in the design, and then when we understand there might be a problem or there might be something that can be, elevated through the maybe more elaborate simulation, we go speak to the consultants. Like, this is a very good thing. Like, if you go to consultant and you just don't know anything about what will be the consequences, what will be the outcomes of anything, it's usually the professionals sometimes just give you complex things. It's not very open to understanding. But if you understand with these tools, with these simulation tools, it's very basic, and when you go, you know your work, you know your stuff, and then it goes very smooth in that way. And our Instagram feeds, we are posting, we are making some design studies every week. 2 design studies. We gave a promise to make it as also a practitioner of the as an architect. And then what happened here is that our clients, when they come to us, they don't give samples from other architects or other designs. They started to pointing our designs from our Instagram feed. And then this is really interesting because we don't take this as real buildings. And then also they say when they look at these pictures, they say like, I like the material, I like the scale, I like this place, I like that place, and then the in-between space here, things like that. And we try to excavate these things from their needs and combine them and then move forward. And it's really, very exciting to have people talking over our references, not other things. And then because these are our designs, so we have the foundations and basic there waiting for us. And then we combine and make too many variations for it using this one.
And hi, this is Pinar from Synthetic Architecture. And this part I'm going to talk about the AI-based videos. And this one I created for the Architectural Biennale in Turkey. And this is a theme. The Biennale theme was in between spaces. And then my main target audience was kids. And this is why I really tried to create it very colorful video for it. Next one, please. Thank you. And this project took approximately a month with research, with a teamwork, obviously. And for the in-between place, we choose the Bosphorus in Istanbul because we are living in Istanbul, and it's very unique space for the project because it connects to the Asia and Europe. And we made a list of the sea creatures that we see here live in Bosphorus and migrate there. And we imagine a feature of floating islands as an in-between space. So we prepared an inventory of, like we see saltwater marsh plants, yes, thank you, marsh plants here. And then this images, next, thank you. And these images are going to be my ref images for Midjourney, my algorithm for Midjourney. Because as we know, Midjourney has a very various imagination when we are creating something. Generally, I don't use ref images when I'm creating architectural forms because I really wanted to see the surprises of Midjourney, and I really wanted to create them for my proposals. But in that case, I really wanted to use that ref images for specific results. Next, please. We can see the dozens of images here. And we had to pick the right and specific main images from that. And this is why we had to create it together. And next, please. And this is the main images for the video production. Yeah, thank you. Next one. And in that part, I started to turn into these images to the video with a very specific, very simple prompt. We are seeing that swimming fishes in slow motion. This is runway, by the way. And next, please. And as a final touch, I created a voiceover by cloning my voice to read the script that I wrote before. We are going to see it. She has a little bit British accent, which I don't have. Next one. And this is the final presentation in exhibition. And we have an inventory of all creatures expected to live on the floating islands, and we planned for the film to play the movie in the middle. And then this is the movie. It's just a 1-minute movie, and I hope it works well.
Turkey is a country surrounded by seas on 3 sides, shaped for millennia by a rich culture of fishing. The Black Sea offers anchovy, bonito, bluefish. The Marmara provides sardine and horse mackerel. The Aegean has gilthead bream and grouper. The Mediterranean shelters dusky grouper and red mullet. Yet this richness is under threat. We imagine a future where plants able to live in both salt water and fresh water take root naturally, forming small islets. Seeds carried by currents, pollen brought by the wind, and shoots anchored to the seabed create spaces where life can flourish again. Over time, these areas bring back crustaceans, fish, birds, and insects, restoring balance above and below the water. Our pilot site is the Bosphorus in Istanbul, a rare in-between line connecting Asia and Europe, the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara. Here, natural islets can create both ecological and urban connections. These floating utopias will not only help restore nature, but also repair the bond between humanity and the natural world. In time, as we accept the presence of these habitats, we may learn to speak to them again. Are we ready to show the patience and care required to begin this dialogue?
This was my first AI-based video, and it was really fun. It was really easy to create it, and I was happy with the result. And also, we are going to be part of a South African Design Week at the end of October. As a team, we always try to be a part of a Design Week or Biennale every year. Yeah, this is it. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thanks, guys. Let's move on swiftly to the West Coast to Greg, who is based in LA, an architect, a surfer, and someone with an extraordinary imagination and critical edge to what he does. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me, Neil. Appreciate that. And the last few presentations were terrific, and I think brought everything to a head. In terms of this, I think Carlos mentioned it, there's control and magic, and I'm after the magic. And I want to open this up. Share screen. Oops. So a lot of my work is based on the use of Midjourney. About a year and a half ago, and as all these programs were coming out, it was almost exhausting. And Midjourney seemed to have the most or the best visuals. And I thought, okay, let's just focus on that. At the time too, is with Runway, because I did want to animate things. And now that Midjourney's come up with motion, it's just strictly Midjourney to keep it simple. And one of the reasons I even wanted to do this was to get to know AI before it got to know me, really. So today what I want to touch on is my process and the approach for the images I make, the editing and curation aspects of it. And again, just more of a, let's see what it gives me. Just a quick intro, though, to step back a bit. I'm an architect, an educator, about 30 years in the profession. I was a associate principal and technical director for Bauer Architects for a number of years. And we worked in with educational facilities, schools, performing arts centers, big assembly spaces. And so I'm familiar with that sort of level of architectural type 1, steel frame, et cetera, et cetera. But before I was doing any of that, and before I was putting words into, machines, as a young architect, as most architects do, or young architects, I imagine, is made furniture. And I did furniture and lighting from just the hardware store aisles. I would walk down to Home Depot and grab a duct or grab some conduit and slap them together. And it was based on the idea of the ready-made, which was Marcel Duchamp and Man Ray and Dali actually would take pre-manufactured items and pull them right from their shelves and stick them in the gallery. They weren't worried about the craft as much as the choice. And I've often thought architects were really the ultimate Dada artists, and that they selected stuff off the shelf and reassembled it into something entirely new. And so with that in mind, with that in mind, I then took it to today, and now I see it from Duchamp's ready-mades to AI's ready-mades. And so rather than walking down the hardware store aisles, now I drive down the city streets and pull fragments of freeways and fragments of buildings. And now I've started to move even into text and policy and things like that to blend those together into images.
Like, Greg, are you wanting to share some stuff? We're not seeing any.
Oh, you're not seeing my screen? Oh,
no,
shoot.
no.
Oh, darn. Okay,
So
bear with me. Yes, I was. Doggone it, you guys.
maybe you could quickly just take us through the images from that beginning very quickly, then just boom. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
You were looking like you were operating it, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Can you share
Yeah.
the screen now? See it now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry. So just step back real quick. This is the opening slide. Edifice dreaming is what I've called this, between beauty and banality. Again, here was a slide of me as the architect trying to show from the projects I worked on, big assembly spaces, etc. And then the furniture lining I did as a younger architect. Now, again, fast forward to today, and I see it again, not from walking down the hardware store aisles, but now the city streets, and I'm able to pull disparate elements of the city. It becomes my ready-made in a way. And for example, in this piece on the left here, this was a response to the fires in LA in January. One of the complaints was, hey, you know, the fire hydrants ran out of water. And when you think about it, most cities aren't designed to put the entire city out. They're designed to put out one structure at a time. So I wondered, what would the fire hydrant that could put the whole city out look like? And I also wanted to show the prompts here. A lot of people have asked me, you know, what's the prompt or how do you do that? And so I thought it'd be interesting to show the prompts. Sometimes there might be some early ones in here, version 6 or so, or 5.2, but you'll notice if you look at some of the parameters and modifiers, I use them here and there when I think I need them. They vary, but the main thing is the prompts are fairly straightforward. They're simple, they're not very long initially, and then I build out on them if I need to. This other side here, the indoor-outdoor furniture, I noticed down at the beach here, there are a ton of camper vans, and people find all ways to sort of live around it and, you know, lay around. And I just thought, what if one of those motorhomes was actually the piece of furniture itself? And so that's where this comes from, a sectional sofa in the style of an RV motorhome with metal siding. So I've just, that is the basis of the idea. It's rooted in the idea of the ready-made and taking these things that are already there and exaggerating them and bringing forward and changing their context so it becomes more of a provocation to look. Now, being from LA, and certainly this is not LA centric, I just happen to have all this around me, so I'm just responding to it. And I've always sort of seen, you know, LA as a hallucination in plain sight. And so some of the things I use as the ready-mades for my work are amusement parks or theaters or a taco stand or sheet metal, you know, the beaches, signage. And for example, some of those relate to coastal coasters here, which is just putting obviously a coaster in the ocean, pretty unusual. On the left or on the right of that is Lightweight, a project called Lightweight, which is based loosely on the idea of LA as a lot of earthquakes, and this notion of this heavy overhanging light being lightweight in a heavy discussion was interesting, sort of back and forth. I don't know if you could see it, but I see the Hollywood sign here. The Hollywood sign, and turn that into housing itself, because the Hollywood sign was originally done to advertise for housing, except no housing ever got built, or very little. Parking lot resort here on the lower left was just a play on an asphalt, a resort made all of asphalt, and parking striping was, the primary design element. Entitlements or exclusion in this case here of right-of-ways, and then car culture in the lower right here of a lowrider high-rise, which was just simply a play on words, but also the notion of the car culture and lowriders in the LA area. So I see AI as a new kind of ready-made machine. And it's more than just an AI, an image generator. I think it's an extension of our imagination. And, it really extends that logic a lot for me. It's not about maybe perfect renderings or glossy dreamscapes. It's about using AI as, let the city itself hallucinate. It's not really creating from nothing. It's exposing really the fictions embedded in the everyday. And this particular piece on the left here, this is called Sheltered Dreams, and it's takes the blue tarp from a lot of homeless shelters. People use those for homeless shelters and tarps, and it explores maybe if they were in a ceiling or in a flowing state, where beauty and sort of the darkness of living or on the street are combined here. And then next to that would be traffic gods, which was this idea that what if the freeway was an art gallery? What if you were able to put sculptures on the freeway where they become the supports of the freeway itself almost, and become a drive-through museum? So it touches on this idea of exclusivity and inclusion, and that the freeways, and particularly in LA, tend to bisect some areas and destroy neighborhoods and excluded a lot of families and people. And so I'm always interested in that sort of tension, I think, is what drives some of these, and where I'm interested in. So through all that, it started to dawn on me that as I'm doing this, these buildings then become characters. And like any play, there are protagonists and antagonists. Sometimes the architecture is helpful, sometimes not so much. And in this case, there were a lot of, I see a lot of fashion shows that people do, and they're really beautiful and shiny and sparkly. But I've never done those. So I was inspired to do a fashion show, but on the freeways. And who better to do that than maybe Rick Owens? I don't know if you're familiar with him as a fashion guy. He was kind of a tall, funny guy. But I thought, okay, here's another good one where the freeway is, it's an exclusionary thing. It keeps people out. And then this high couture. I like that tension between the two, that you would take up a freeway for a fashion show. And then again, you can see some of the prompts are fairly simple, but the way I'll work a project is I see the Instagram squares as these micro essays, if you will, where the project all fits within there. On my feed, everything's a little different. Not too much blends over to the next post. I want to try to keep an idea as one. And so, for example, in this case here, I just happened to read an article lately about AI and how much it consumes so much power. So actually, that has really affected my workflow. I used to do a ton more images. Now I've sort of reduced that, and particularly with Midjourney coming up with motion, that's really even better, because motion helps, for me anyway, explain the idea or convey the idea. And as I'm curating through these, I'm looking for images that support the idea. If they don't support the main concept, then off they go. I go through a ton of images that are really interesting looking, but they didn't support anything I'm trying to do, so I move on from them. So out of maybe 100 or so images or whatever it is, then to come down to 5 that really speak to this, to speak to the concept. So really, the concept becomes a site for me as architects. It's hard to work with a blank piece of paper. I need something to respond to. And so I kind of come up with these ideas that I'm able to respond to architecturally. So things look reasonable from an architectural point of view. Cantilevers aren't too drastic. Gravity is somewhat adhered to. I try not to have too many floaty things. But I've started to see this as the almost hero and villain buildings, although not quite. So the freeways and beaches, amusements, infrastructure, they all are up for grabs. They all become part of the language here, the freeway pools. And people have asked me, where does this come from? Where do you think of this? And it's funny, most of it's just through observation and driving around. And I think AI and Midjourney in particular has really affected the way I think about design. I used to think about things as a constrained on a site, and I think some of the earlier work shows that a little bit. It's rather modest. But then, you start to realize that, you can really extend out into the city. So the city has really, again, become the playground. And so when I'm driving around, I've never used to think, oh, in a pool, go on a freeway. But now that I drive around, I'm like, hey, could that be housing? Hey, what if I was to do this? Hey, what if I was to put this here? And I'll hear phrases or something, I'll read something, and I'll think, oh, I bet that'd be great in Midjourney. So a lot of this just starts to evolve unto itself. The sandcastle, being built by construction equipment and such like that. And this particular one, a lot of people at the time were doing these beautiful coastal retreats, and oftentimes they fall to the sea, and like sandcastles, they eventually go away. So no matter how robust they are, they all fade. And so that was the idea behind this one. And again, now I start to, use the freeway and big structures a lot because they are so prominent here in LA. Maybe other cities, there's other things. Maybe you'd be working on trains a lot. But it's not, rendering structures. It's really revealing their intentions. And this particular one on the left, the idea behind this one was fast food freeways. And what would the ultimate, if McDonald's could have the roads actually run right through the middle of them, I'm sure they would. I've worked on some big malls where they've actually had the Caltrans build new off ramps for them. So that kind of where that one came from. And then I've also started to use text. Rainer Bannon's for ecologies, thanks to Neil, he kind of shoved me in that direction a little bit. And then I started looking at Jane Jacobs and, her observations on the city, and then started to craft, for example, in this prompt, I wanted to see a bunch of people drinking beer, evidently. But I was looking at what would life be like 300 years into the future, lifeless towers and parking deserts, architectural spectacle ignoring the sidewalk, a metropolis built to be seen, not lived. And this is animated. It's great because it pulls back on all this. And now, as I'm also understanding that these are characters and they're sometimes good, sometimes not so good, it starts to, I've always sort of used humor and critique in the work, but I've really started pushing it into the current administration. Not too obvious. I try not to be really obvious about it for obvious reasons. But I feel like even though these juxtapositions are funny, I think that humor opens a door. And in this case, again, the idea of, Mickey Mouse as a freeway support, this idea again that these freeways don't always bring things together, even at the happiest place in the world. And Disneyland happens to be down the street from me. This other one, Golf Force One, which is a golf course on the aircraft carrier. I won't have to explain that too much, I hope, but the absurdness of these images, of this image, is equal to the absurdness of some of the policies that represents. And so now I've started to more be a little biting sometimes on stuff. I try to watch it because I notice it's not super popular on Instagram. I notice the shiny stuff, but I can't do that. So, again, what lingers after the humor is the critique, exaggerated, really what's already there. And in this case, it's a message or a moment about welcoming back a lot of immigrants that were removed. And so to use reclaimed piers and some of the infrastructure that's already there to do that. And the next image over, van lords, it was about an article I remember reading where a guy or a person of what they call van lord would buy these RVs up, and there were a ton of them after COVID they were stacked all over LA, people living in them under freeways, overpasses all over. And I thought, hey, wonder what if you were to make this into an apartment, and this guy was buying these RVs from the people and then turning around, fixing them up and renting them back to them. So I thought, okay, what would a landlord apartment look like? And there we have it here. How did I say this? And the mathematical patterning layout, like an elegant puzzle. People walking around. So for me, these are challenges to try to see, can I get this? I'm always trying to push it to understand, can I get what I'm thinking? And so again, it starts with the concept. And then I'll work off my phone a lot, and will prompt right there as I'm either at a red light or whatever, just to see if it gets something going. And so there's a lot of ideas that go nowhere, some ideas that start to output, what you see here. And so they're nice to chase down. And so really, I feel like the surrealism in this context is, play with teeth. On the left here, the name of this one is, things happen gradually and then all at once. I won't even, you can read the prompt. And then the other one here is with the sun is civic erosion, where you can go online and see these on Insta, but the facade falls forward. And so while they're compelling images, they also have a bite to them. They're not all like that, some like that. And so I kind of see this as a new way to operate in the era of AI for architects. It's AI is a co-conspirator and provocateur, if you will. It's a way for me to see the city, to unveil the truths that are hiding in plain sight there. And for example, in this particular piece, Dezeen had a post about, should architecture schools teach students construction, to build? And architects don't build anything. We oversee construction. We don't actually build anything. It'd be helpful if we knew how to build. And I think that was the point of this particular post, is it's more than just a pretty picture. There's hundreds of people involved. There's dozens of contractors looking at your work. And so I think schools are enough to teach design. The student should go out on his own and search that out, talk to contractors, knock on trailer doors. And then again, on the left here, Cliff's Liquor Store. Again, my captions and the imagery, I try to pair those up so they have more impact. And again, who would put a liquor store in the bottom of a cliff like that? But in my world, I guess you do stuff like that. And so again, more to challenge and to as a provocation to the audience. Really, this is to everybody. It's, what are the ready-mades hiding in your cities, in your towns? And I think we saw a little bit of that in the preceding presentations, but this is really an invitation. It's not a conclusion the way we're, but the buildings are already talking, and so I asked, are we willing to listen? And like any city could be your muse here. In this particular case, the profile of a woman, with the freeways of the city on her mind. And then in closing, I would just ask, what would your city say if you let it dream out loud? So thanks a lot for dreaming with me.
Thanks, Greg. It's a shame you didn't show the video of that surfing scene, because I think, first of all, it was probably the only architect who's featured in Surfer magazine. But maybe two before that, just to go back to it. But also there was one of those. Can you go back to Greg? Just go.
Yeah.
Oh, that one. Yes. it was absolutely chaotic in the video version of that, which I was super entertaining and provocative. So
Well, I
anyway,
appreciate. Yeah, Neil, you know what? I had a little trouble with video. I think I could run that real fast. We got to move on. Oh no, I took it off.
okay,
But I appreciate that. In fact, Neil, you were real responsible for the Surfer Magazine article, and through Design Midjourney. So appreciate that.
right. We should thank Ilyas in Turkey, who was
Yes.
who posted that. This is a kind of global world where we're all interconnected in a kind of strange way. So anyway, Greg, I think this is very refreshing, a very alternative approach to deal with content and to address sort of kind of social political issues in a humorous way, which I think a lot of us appreciate it. A lot of your posts bring a smile to those who see them. So thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you. That's the idea too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's move on to last but not least, Angelica, who has been part of our team for some time in Brazil. So we're straddling the world today, as I mentioned. Angelica, welcome.
Thank you, Neil. I guess Greg needs to stop sharing so I can do it.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Greg has a problem with sharing.
I sure do.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Okay. Let me share sound and with the widescreen. Wait. And so I can see in widescreen as well. Just a second. Okay. Oops. Can you see? Oops. Can you see it? Yeah. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for this invitation. It's very important for me to keep participating and also as part of Digital Futures. But today I'm going to present some of the work and research and work that I've been doing with my students at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. So I'm from the south of Brazil. And the program of research and post-graduation in architecture. My presentation is like from image to idea, generative AI design workflows, and specifically directed to pedagogy and to design studio and parametric design class. So I'm going to talk about multimodal foundation models, more specifically OpenAI's, GPTs, and Google Gemini. And I see these models as conversational partners with deep reasoning, particularly these Bayes models. So before I start with showing the work, I'd just like to introduce him specifically to the students. It's not propaganda, but I think it's a very good choice, and this is how we can help students to work with these models. Gemini is offering a free 1-year program for students, so if they want to apply it, they get 1 year for free, and just have to be careful to disconnect before that, if not, it's not to start charging. But and also to make the difference between the Gemini multimodal and the Google Labs, which is also interesting. The Gemini multimodal, you're gonna have the features of deep search, video, image, and canvas. The video specifically inside Gemini would let you do 3 videos a day. And but if you try to connect with Google Labs, it means that you're going to have other models to work with, and Flow is the one that works with video, and then you have like credits, and you can also do sequences. And Whisk is very interesting because you can do image inputs, 3 different image inputs. I'm going to show you later, and then it's very quick to get a response. And Image FX is the one just text to image, and the music I haven't tried yet, but I guess it's also interesting. And the difference is that Google Labs is also for training, so you don't get to choose if you don't want your work to be used for training, and you can do that on Gemini. And this is just like a show of Google Labs with effects, and just for the students to know how they can opt out of their history to be there on the Google research. And here Google Imagen, just a text video. And just an introduction. And then this is ChatGPT 4.0. Now we're using the 5. but you can also opt out. And one big difference for me from the history of ChatGPT, I've always worked with OpenAI. I was even a red team for DALL-E inside ChatGPT. And the difference before DALL-E inside ChatGPT and then when they moved inside GPT-4o is that DALL-E 3 was diffusion model. And when you wrote your prompt, the transformer model, the language model, would rewrite your prompt on a longer prompt, and then we make the model. So it was faster, but more creative. And now with GPT-4o and GPT-5, it's a whole transform model. So it works like top to bottom, left to right, and it takes a long time to do it. And you have to be more specific because it's going to use your own prompt. This is kind of like a Gemini works with. It has not the transformer, but with the diffusion models as well. So it takes your prompt, it connects to the Google Imagen, and then you're gonna make another prompt and then produce the image, just to make the difference. But one feature that I think is very interesting from both of them, you can combine pictures and you can combine concepts. You can bring here I brought a picture of a site and an image of a diamond, and then I asked a specific project, a specific material, and then I keep changing the scenery of seasons to see how it was working with. And another one, just it's not one of these foundation models, but another type of scenery that we have been working with is they are all multi-models, but they also are multi-models with many models inside one. And this is Glyph. We've been working together with them, and also I'm a tester for them. So in Glyph, what is interesting for when you work in the studio with the students, you can compose a questionnaire and direct the students exactly to what you want them to produce, so they don't have to worry about making a prompt. And this is on the right here. You have like two columns, which is actually one stripe with of blocks. So each block can be fed into the following block. So and at the these greenish ones are just the input blocks, and this pink one is an AI block where you can put all the information from before, and then you can put up your prompt. And this is one example. This is the prompt. And here's all the inputs in green are from the previous blocks. So it is the sequence. And then I can even put it in, they have animation, and anyways, you can direct exactly with the material. I put here a questionnaire of geometries, materials, and occupations, and the types of openings, and so on and so forth. So it's very productive for design studios to work with. And now my AI workflows, I also like to bring this one just to see that sometimes in order to make a good product, you can mix different models. So here, like from OpenAI to Runway to Photoshop, and then back to Kyber, where it used to be, and then back again editing on Runway, and then to do all this composition. So we started working very recently with Gemini. And we realized together with the students and my postgraduate students and the graduate students that to work with Gemini and to get a good development with it, you can also edit images and things. But one of the things that we found out is that when you have a reference image to start with, and we start testing like with design thinking ideas to understand references, not only to use it as an output, like as a finished design, but also work with it as a conversational partner. So if you produce an image, an initial image, which is pictorial, like this one of the whale, or a technical drawing, the model, Gemini, is going to understand much better what, in terms of geometry, if you want to use the geometry of the reference input as a concept idea for the project that you're going to be developing. So I kind of put this pipeline from the conceptual phase. So LLMs as conversational design partners, and you go to an analogy, and then you use the reference image. You can go directly to rendering if you like, but you can do a technical drawing or an animal or an object, and then you do the reasoning, and then you ask them to interpret the geometry, and then you can input your architectural objective or a subject, or is a pavilion or a building. And then after that, you can also keep going on and ask for create technical drawings of the structure, which is getting very precise, and you can also do some of film. And here is a video. And here is one example. How do you change the image on Gemini? I've been struggling with that. And then I read also another good place for information is on X, a platform. Everybody exchange information there, and also on Discord. But one of the things is you can make annotations on the image, and then with words, like you put arrows and words, remove glass panels, remove birds, remove wood panels, and finally Gemini would do the output, removing those things that you ask, or changing things. You can also paste images and ask to insert the images inside the other image, and it's going to make it very good outputs for that. And here's what's one example of my whale project. So I asked, make a whale shaped like a scientific drawing from the 1800s, and then he made this drawing of the whale. And then I asked to make a pavilion out of it on the beach. So he made the pavilion, and here I put my pipeline. So first, and then the whale pavilion. And then I asked it to do the technical drawings, which are getting really specific. And after all that, in order to continue with the pipeline, I took it to Triple to do a 3D model of it. It's like it's a mesh, and it's a render mesh. And it kind of extended too much detail, but anyways, you can. I couldn't do for this moment, but I'm gonna 3D printed it, and we did it on Class Without Objects. So you can go to a full pipeline from a conceptual idea or a drawing, and then take it to a project or a building, and then do the technical drawings to help you understand what you're doing. And then you can 3D print it, and then you have it on your hand, and then you can go to Beam or, I don't know, Grasshopper, and then do your design. So for now, this is another example of the same pipeline, which I wanted to do a falcon and ask for the Gemini to understand and study the shape of the falcon, and then use it as an inspiration to do a building hanging on a cliff. And after that, I asked for technical drawings, and it comes up with all these drawings here. And finally, this is the one with the spaceship. So I was thinking, oh, let me make a wheel of an airplane. And also the analogy things like design thinking, brainstorming. I look at the technical drawing of the wheels. Oh, it looks like a spaceship. So I asked it to make it out of the structure and the geometry of the wheel, a spaceship, and then I put it on a video to animate it. So it's just a research study. And now I'm going to show a little bit of my two classes. The first one is the parametric design class, where we start teaching the students how to do a parametric design using Grasshopper and Rhino. But we also have a lot of problems on teaching. This is our undergraduate students for the fourth semester. And it's very hard to teach the computational design pipeline and computational thinking because it's very abstract as well. So we started playing first with AI, so they can start thinking on geometries and understanding how to use references and work with analogies, not just literally or looking at like daily, but really getting references out of it, like a honeybee or this is a vase. So we started this first introduction classes. This is the group of students took a picture of the vase that they have at home, and then they took it to Glyph, and then they put it in a park with all the questionnaires that I prepared on Glyph. So after that, they took an image, a picture that they took at the park of their site, and then they insert the output into the park. And then we took it to Tripod, we did a mesh, and then finally they 3D printed here. And then after that, we also asked them to do different materials and places and try to change and exchange and try to see how they can work with it. So this is the first the initial pipeline of the semester, working with text and image, and then going all the way to 3D printing. And then we start the tutorials. And also this is a very important part to use. It's being very important to use the AI here, because the tutorials are basically, we're teaching them how to design shapes with Grasshopper, and they're very abstract. And then our students, they can say, well, what am I going to do this in reality? How can I use this? And our school is very modernist oriented and very straightforward orthogonal building. So we try to use AI to let them know how can they imagine those shapes into real buildings. So here's some examples of the outputs of the tutorials and how they inserted into architecture. But previously, this is just an analog pipeline of knowing how to do with a computational design workflow before they start doing the tutorials. But anyway, they came with the previous exercise of the AI geometries, and then from this they do this pipeline of understanding how the geometry is built, and how after they do this, they can go to, we start teaching the very first basic Grasshopper tutorials. And then finally, the final project for the students, they have to do a structure in the park, a pavilion structure in the park, and we have to choose a place in the park, and we ask them to imagine dystopic universes, dystopic situations with climatic disasters. So this one, they have the drought, and they started playing before doing the exercise of the tutorials with the flowers and with distributions, and then they thought it was a good idea to transpose this to the park and to their drought situation on this project. So they kind of kept developing and the object, and then they did laser fabrication of it, and they put a model in thinking of the structure, and then back to AI to do the renderings and some animations. And here on the left, we start playing with Python with ChatGPT. We asked ChatGPT. We put the image of the output on Rhino, like this image, and asked them to make a code to work with Grasshopper, within Grasshopper. So we just kept to copy and paste the code inside the Python component in Grasshopper. And we also ask for the parameterized options, so you can move the sliders and then you can get a parametric variation out of it. But this was just an experiment. We didn't implement it yet in the school pipeline, but we're planning to do it this semester again, just to use the large language models, not only to do the image renderings, but also to start working with Python, but also to help them understand how they could decompose the geometry before they go to coding. Because one of the other issues that they have, that they have a lot of components to work with, and they have the idea, the beginning idea, but they don't know how to translate their idea into the composition and to feed the Grasshopper with all the steps in order to do the parametric design. So we are starting to talk with ChatGPT and Gemini to understand geometry and how can I build this in Grasshopper, not to ask the code specifically, but the strategy. So we were testing this. This is another example of this semester as well. This one was the alien ecosystem. Also, they have like an alien invasion for their pavilion in the park. So this is the whole pipeline for the earlier exercise with lamps, and then transposing it as an object in the park, and then printing it, and then taking to the idea of the alien ecosystem, and then generating images, and then the mesh, and then finally doing the structure and working with Grasshopper and the laser printer. So this is the whole pipeline, and at the end, each one of the students of the same group have to do a little variation of their work. And this is the third one that I'm showing for this, which is another pavilion, the Pluvia pavilion. This is for the drought. So here's all the code that they work with, and it's a little animation. And this in the back, I just put here is the whisk from Gemini. So whisk asks you to put an object, a site, and a style. So it can mix, and the output was this one. Not this, I just pasted this here, but this is like a one output of Whisk, which is very good because it inserted in the site, and it's very good result. And after that, oops, I'm going to show a little bit of, that was my parametric design class, and this is my design studio. We've been working, they have to design a design hotel in nature, on a very beautiful place close by the river, and have to do small little units. So firstly, I've been working with them with this matrix where I have a pipeline for making a prompt, and then they try different AIs, mostly as referential images, and then we 3D print them, and they put pictures of the sites, and they try to do a little work with that. But we also got a little bit stuck with the work. The design wasn't very concept oriented. The concept was remaining only the colors and the ambience of the video, sometimes with the roof changes. So I invited my PhD student, Barbara Lorenzoni, to help me break the mold a little bit and try to work more with the concepts this semester. This is happening now, like this is from last week. So we put up a pipeline. So how the students, how can we drive the students to understand better a conceptual reference and to put it integrated into their own projects. So we started working with analogies and analogic drawings and analogic models, and then transposing it to Gemini. So I'm going to show you only 2 works, and then I'm done. This is one group that work with Butterfly. So they start doing this with Photoshop and Photopea, and also with paper models to do collages, and to understand first how this geometry and could be transposed into something graphic and something 3D. So we asked them to think on a facade design, and then here they work with ChatGPT. And then to do furniture design, and then we transpose it to building design. And so this is a whole pipeline where they keep changing it, and then into site design. This is Gemini. The Gemini just understood the shape of the butterfly with our site picture, and then we transform it into roads and the place the hotels inside the landscape. And this is the last image I'm going to show. I try to keep up with the time. So with this group, they work with this. I don't know how to call this in English, but this dente de leão, which is the dandelion. And I don't know also the name of this in English, catavento. And here is the first. They first tried. This is all Gemini. They first tried to work with an architecture structure. And here, this is a collage, a hand collage. They printed, and then they do it by hand or Photoshop, and then start playing with structures. So this is this is the paper collage, and then this is the AI, and then AI. So, and this is the Photoshop collage, and the building a picture of the site. So here they're trying like a pier, and then they can start seeing how this nature image from nature, from a plant, can be transposed into architecture. So they can start learning and how to transpose references, or conceptual references, or biological references, or object directed references into architecture. So these are different trials that I made, and this is from this object. So this is all the paper models, and then they took the images of the pictures, and then start taking it to Gemini, and again working with objects, site facades, and architectural buildings, and the whole pipelines. We are now at the point where they are working with models, physical models made out of soap in the site, and then we're gonna move up to developing the 3D printing, and then actually the real design. And this is it. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. I hope
Angelica,
it was useful.
Let's get on. I know that Carlos never sleeps, but it is gone midnight in Singapore, so I'm kind of conscious of that. And you have a question on the chat for Carlos. My question for Carlos about Formas.ai. To what extent do you believe this platform can capture performance-driven criteria like structure, climate, materiality, beyond the purely formal explorations? And then second question, and how does it ensure the diversity of the outcomes and avoid falling into repetitive stylistic patterns that are characteristic of mid-journey or stable diffusion? Yeah.
Okay, good one. Good two questions. Well, thank you so much. Don't worry about the time. I'm actually now just for a few days based in Spain. So
okay.
yes, it's only for a few hours. So don't worry. Just then regarding the questions, I think to the first one, I think it's a very good question. Probably the addressing performance-driven issues in architecture is definitely a very important matter. The thing is, probably in the platform, particularly about Formas.ai, is probably maybe the platform maybe not now, but will be. Is designed in a way that it's actually going to be able to collect and integrate every single model that will be released. So the idea is that that will be a space in which the model will be available to be integrated, and there will be an interface for that. I'm actually exploring training models on structural design in a way that maybe not fully calculate, but at least help visualize the stress from any given building. So that probably at some point would be a recommendation for designers, but not a tool that will give you the calculations yet. I think that will be stages, and probably talking about a year or two. I mean, the platform is successful, will integrate those things. Regarding the standard repetition, yeah, I mean, it's a constant question because we're basically somehow biased and determined by the models that we use, and that's why one of the ideas that the platform has is that we are actually trying to integrate many models there, so it's not one. And probably the outcome is a combination of 2 or 3 of them. So probably it's not directly seeing the mid-journey effect here. It's going to be probably a bit more diffuse. But the most important thing is I'm giving a lot of space, which I believe, to the human component. So that's why the sketching, that's why all these interfaces are asking you to take action and to give that input fast or right after to really keep on the conversation. That's why also the chat. So I'm trying to fight that. Of course, we are going to use models, and models are trained. But for instance, one of the things that also keeping as well with the platform is that you can train your instant models, like something that could be relatively like 5 to 10 to 15 images. You can do it, and you can work with that model as well. So it's probably not going to be solved fully because it's very difficult to solve that question. But at least will help designers feel that they have more agency. That's my intention.
Yeah, I think the question of physics, I mean, I've noticed that little things are beginning to emerge, and these are technically they're called emerging capabilities, that you can get someone to walk up steps now in a way that you couldn't, which is kind of astonishing in many different levels. But and I think some models do have a better understanding of physics. Yes. I think VO2 was better on physics, right? But I wonder whether the models themselves are learning or not. Probably not, but this is something in the future that we need to expect, and I think it's very clear that they really don't understand physics on the whole. They get a sense of what a vault might look like, but they're not calculating the structure. Yeah.
I think that's also I believe that the way they learn structures is definitely not the way that we do learn structures. So probably they have a certain sense of a structural design, even it's basically image-based models, but now with the multi-modals, I mean, you can try with Gemini. Sometimes you get so surprised by the understanding of even the tectonics, or when you ask for kind of a building sequence of a certain like carved space, it will get you like these kind of structures that are going to support the second level of a structure. It have a certain logic that, of course, is based on what it's been trained, but start to make more sense. I mean, if you ask that question to a model 1 year ago, you don't get anything. So I think that tells that it's moving in a good direction. And as I said, models will get increasingly smarter, and ideally we will be able to integrate those models with other models to produce something new.
Yeah. I've got a question.
Yes, sorry.
So go ahead, Ila.
Just quickly, no, because I need to jump off. Sorry. I agree with everything that has been said. Obviously, physics is something that is going. Some models are doing better than others. But what we experience with Google DeepMind and the Flash 2.50 is that it certainly understands geometries, even very intricate geometry. It can kind of predict the sequence of how it constructs within a volumetric space. And then not so much from the visuals and the still models, but the video ones. There's certain ones that understand for sure physics, thermodynamics, and how things react in space. So if you, a little example, gravity and water is something very fun to experiment with all of those models, and you see how they can interpret. And they seem to have this data trained embedded knowledge of what gravity and water does on surfaces or like free flowing. It's very fascinating. So I think the moment you collide and converge all of those models, one is going to instrumentally influence the other. To your point, Neil, that you said you don't know if they're learning. I have my suspects there. I do believe the models are actually learning, even from us generally working with them. Personally, I have experienced some sort of sequential growth that not necessarily comes from the tech startup or company, obviously doing their own progressive development, but I think it is increasingly exponentially growing. And sometimes mimic learning versus actual learning can look exactly the same. So we might think, mimicking or repetition or copying somehow gets you to the same final result of learning. Is like, I don't know if any of you have kids, but when you have a kid, just by listening to vocabulary and language, they then learn how to speak. And the same way by seeing people walking or somehow analyzing how the space works around, and then they get that pre-embedded knowledge. I think all of this AI models and robotics, they kind of respond in a similar way through observation or through repetition, at least, even if it's not active, aware learning, they seem to have that kind of growth. But I'm super thankful and grateful. I think all of you are phenomenal professionals, and I feel very excited to be part of this group. Thank you so much. Yes.
Can I ask you one final question? I mean, I think that they're learning, but not learning from physics. They're learning from our stylistic preferences. I totally agree with that.
100%.
Yeah.
Or
but just
corrections. Yeah.
I want to ask you and Carlos, maybe ask you first, Ila, this question. What would, I mean, there is a new form of practice emerging quite clearly, Tim Fu, whatever it is, and whatever. What advice would you give to professionals in architecture stuck in the old-fashioned model? How would you break into this kind of world?
Well, play and deep curiosity and deep creativity with the AI models is one. I do even in-house training at the moment with Dion. We practice these new AI innovative kind of workflows, and I do collaborate with even established architectural practices, because we tend to be the mediator between an established architect and the client, or at least boosting and leapfrogging this kind of innovation. But I would say get on those models as fast as you can. And of course, even for the professors here on the panel, you are instrumentally educating the new kind of architects, right? And I think the industry is ready and waiting for these new graduates to come out with those kind of new expertise or new capabilities. So that's something that I also actively know. So I hope that eventually those new tech savvy or AI experts, architecturally or design or creatively, are going to enter the workforce, because the industry is acknowledging this need. But play and deep creativity is the only thing that can give you that sensitivity and awareness.
Yeah. Thanks, Ila. Maybe
Thank you so much.
Put that question to Carlos now, just to maybe see what his view. Great to see you. Thank you, Ila.
Thanks, Ila. Yeah, I would say what Ila said is I'm subscribed to everything she said about that. I think AI, when you experience AI in design, you're basically seeing a whole new space, right? So I think for our students, how we expose them to, I would say we shouldn't limit kind of the approach to the tools or to the models or any available AI technology that is there. Probably from academia, from institutions, I think we should kind of curate probably or guide them through them in a way that we can make it more effective and also connect to, I think for me, that the most important thing is the connection to our specific knowledge of architecture and our discipline. I mean, anybody can access those models, but not everybody is gonna make architecture with those models, or something that makes sense in terms of architectural culture, centuries of our tradition, and many more to come. Right? I think it's important to develop that new literacy and connection to the fundamentals of architecture with the most advanced like methods that we have. So it can really enable new things. I think for our students could be probably, extremely exciting as well to be using that in early stages. But of course, if we leave it open without guidance and without curation, I think the outcome is going to be terrible. And we are used to seeing now some reviews in project reviews in studio that the outcome is like, come on. I mean, even you can put the AI label there, but we're talking about nothing meaningful in terms of architectural design. So I think it's very important. That's why the role of institutions and academia, and of course, design firms as well, to really be responsible, to bring the discourse, to bring the overarching space for these models to make sense for us. I mean, we're seeing these new models, Nano Banana, amazing, fantastic. I mean, I love them, but is it really gonna, get you to design better, to really propose something that makes sense, more efficient, more relevant, more contextualized? So all these things, I think all these questions, we are in charge of that. So I think we need to even pose those questions even more often, and to warn our students that this is fundamental to our discipline.
Maybe I've got two questions for you, Carlos. But first of all, but in a way, I think you say the connection with architecture, but I think what we're seeing is clients sidestepping the traditional sort of AIA or RIBA route into procuring a client and things like that. An architect. There is a different way. People have come to me on Instagram and so on. There is what we see. I mean, I guess the message I've got for architects is what we have to do right now is not to design a building, but to design the future of our profession. And it seems to me there is an emergent form of practice that is really bypassing those old structures, leaving them behind. And that's the challenge. I mean, we talk about models. It's the model of practice, which I think is the interesting question right now.
I fully agree, and I would encourage our students, young professionals, to really follow that path if possible. I mean, because I think we are in this moment in which all these new opportunities are open and still a lot of space to explore. And we're enabling different connections that you mentioned, this kind of social media. Suddenly you get someone that knows about your work through random posts or to LinkedIn that they saw something. It's so different right now. And that is because as well, these new tools, new technologies are able to communicate better, to spread the message better, and to land more and more people. So that will definitely redefine what practice is, and even what the architectural firm should do to really reach out to people, or to really get the right clients, or really get to make more impact, right? So I think there are different modes of practicing. You mentioned Tim, and Tim Fu is, if not the earliest, one of the pioneers leading this new generation of, I think he set up his firm just 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago. And his traction is amazing. And what he's doing is actually something new that was not done before. Setting up the practice from the fundamentals of AI and taking kind of the challenge to do it. And I think for me, it's an amazing example of what our students could do, with all this potential and power in their hands. Probably they need to follow the established paths, to go here and then there. There are different tracks right now. Definitely very exciting. Even if we put it now also on this analogy of what coding is, right? Most this kind of coding is no longer the same. I mean, that's very clear, tangible case. I mean, you are not coding anymore the same way you code before. You are actually moving somewhere higher. People are now able to code that probably will be seen by the coders as oh, you're coding right now. So I think that would happen to architects too. but these kids are doing this. No, they need to do the architectural thing, the architectural way. And I think that probably will happen more and more. It's a new wave of students trained in a different manner, exposed to different kind of producing architecture, a different relation with the building, with the creation of that. Definitely needs a new model. And as you mentioned, models is definitely the word. We need a new model for that, and it will emerge bottom up from that. It's emerging right now. It will be more tangible in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up from that, the other second question for you was, so in terms of education, it is, you know, with these being bombarded the whole time with these new models as such, and by the time they graduate, you know, with 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, whatever it is, you know, those models will be obsolete. So in a sense, the question is like, you know, what do you try and instill in a student these days? And my notion is really you've got to instill a kind of adventure and an imagination, you know, because that's the skill ultimately that is going to take you somewhere, not the kind of the particular skills that might have been obsolete. It's just been open-minded to the technologies that are there. It's almost difficult to prescribe anything because it won't be around by the time they graduate.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake if we rely our educational models in the tool or the model alone. I mean, it's like we cannot like say that well, we just use Midjourney or just tie to a model or tie to a particular tool. We haven't done that before, and now even more strongly, right? I think, but it's more important to get our students to really be in a way that they are able to adjust and to change faster than before. I mean, when Rhino was released and Grasshopper was released, okay, you have to get there, and then well, there are more plugins, the space keeps growing, and you get to know. But now it's different speed and different scale. You cannot rely on one thing for too long. So you need to develop that ability to change and ability to absorb, and of course to discard so much of the things that are presented to you, because they're presented with many models, many opportunities, many platforms. You can put the image here, we'll create something new. It's like all the many things you can kind of do. But I think it's more critical now to develop that, you want to develop some character, some personality, some direction in architecture. You need to definitely say no, and more strongly now to many of the things you can do with AI. You probably need to put constraints on the models, your own constraints, and to develop that as well as a way to evolve as a practitioner.
Maybe I could just also put that question to Greg, because Greg has got quite a lot of experience here as an architect, and has also been teaching. And in a way, this is a completely new territory. And in some senses, I thought that there was a lesson in what Greg was saying about, look and see what's out there as the ready-made and try and incorporate and adapt it. And in a sense, that's the way we need to adapt to a new world. Greg, what do you think? Can you apply
I haven't taught any AI at the local community college, but what I have done and what I've heard back from the instructors is that they stop them at the early stages. They might develop a concept, but beyond that, it's all handwork. And another thing I've noticed, and listen to Josh, he described this one time that at UNLV, that his students all of a sudden were interested in reading again because they understood that those words could affect their output. And because of that, now they're back into words again, which is encouraging. But for me, I think Carlos is right. You've got to experience a range of AI things that are out there. They're coming fast. There's a lot of them. You're young. You got the time. If you don't have families, et cetera, go and explore that. As you said, I'm sort of at the back end of a career arc. And so I'm not as interested in exploring what's happening. I've sort of built the buildings, done that. Now I'm interested to see what else is out there. How can I extend my imagination? How can I extend my work career with this new thing that I'm still trying to understand and still trying to jag it? But again, like I say, it is about content and less about, isn't this a nice villa off the cliff, which it does beautifully, but I want a little bit more out of it.
Yeah, I guess I can't help but remember the great Jan Kaplicki of Future Systems, who would put out these books that seemed at the time kind of a bit superficial to me, but it was called For Inspiration Only. And he was looking through nature at some of the things that would be inspiring to him. And I think in some ways that we are, I mean, what I thought was interesting about it is it's right in front of our nose, what these issues are. They're right there, and it's almost like being open to that rather than kind of following the structured process, being open to the possibilities that are either there in terms of the software or possibilities in terms of the inspiration. But, I think LA is a fantastic place because you are bombarded with these extraordinary experiences that are kind of, in some ways, hyper real in some senses. But, I think that's almost the thing to be aware of we're still being taught Le Corbusier, and, I don't think Le Corbusier is that relevant anymore, yet, so the education is actually in a bit of a crisis because it needs to adapt to this world, and yet many of the I'm not talking about my own institution, by the way, but many of the professors are dinosaurs, and that's really the challenge. How do you shake things up in that context?
I made a workshop just with the professors, just one.
Yeah.
And many of them attended. It was very good. Sorry.
No, I don't know.
Right, Neil.
Yep.
No, sorry, I didn't. But I think you're right. I do see it's hard for people to change, especially if you've a seasoned professional. This is really new stuff for them, and so that it probably the Angelica students will be those leaders in the next generation.
Well, I guess what I see is there's also already a kind of resistance, not just appearing, but it has appeared. It's consolidating against AI, and that what worries me about education is in practice you have to adapt. You absolutely have to adapt to be competitive, and yet in education, this example I always cite is my experience as a student in Cambridge, where we had one professor telling us not to use the computer in the design studio. I mean, absolutely absurd. I mean, fortunately, not everyone paid attention to that, but those that did, graduated unemployable. And this was kind of a real issue, around the time, let's say around the millennium, the turn of millennium, where I remember having some students at the AA who were working at Foreign Office architects, and they said, well, we really can't employ anybody who's over the age of 40 because they're just not familiar enough with the techniques and technologies and so on. And I think that's increasingly the case. I gave a lecture last week or so at 3XN in Copenhagen. Incredibly progressive, successful firm. I think the average age of the architects there was something like 30 or something. Really, it was a young person's game. And it's almost like, this is another moment that's going to be shaking things out a bit like the computational moment some 30 years ago now. Anyway, I don't know. But I think we have to adapt in order to survive. And, there are new forms of imaginative reconfiguration of what used to be called architectural practice now probably has a different terminology that have been successful. I mean, Tim Fu and so on. And the old model, can it be? How do big firms like Gensler, and I've got one of my DDes candidates is working for Gensler and also working on the question of how does the practice of architecture adapt to this new world? I mean, it is a fascinating new challenge, and I think that practice is taking it more seriously than education. That's my real concern. And we are the ones who are producing the architects of tomorrow without even knowing if that job will exist in the way it does today. Maybe we could get a final comment from the synthetic architecture guys in Turkey. Because you guys, let me say, you guys come from a country that gave us some of the most astonishing AI practitioners that we have. I mean, I'm thinking here not just of Refik Anadol, of course, he's kind of famous. Actually, in Memo Acton, he's the one I think is a real genius. He was behind also the Marshmallow Laserfield piece, the company that was an interactive one based in London. and because he's now in San Diego. But there's also Guven Chosel, also in LA, who's running a practice, AI-based practice, much smaller practices than these big ones, and kind of knocking at the door, So something was happening in Turkey. I don't know what, but it's produced all these figures. And I guess it's really it's a moment when we need to really think where we're going, and what we should be doing. And it's not just the architects. What they need to do is not what we need to do is not to design another building, but to design our profession. It also applies to educators. What we need to do is to design the future of the discipline of architecture. And maybe it's not even the same kind of discipline that it was. Maybe we could take inspiration from, let's say, MIT's Morningside Academy of Design, which is somehow mixed architecture right in there with everything else, actually in the spirit of the Bauhaus, because the Bauhaus didn't actually teach architecture, and yet it produced some incredible architects. And that idea that maybe the architectural imagination should not necessarily be limited to buildings, but it's almost like a way of thinking, and it can be deployed in different arenas. That's always seemed to me to be the extraordinary thing. And I think, Greg, in terms of LA, that was a space where, people at SciArc were doing all sorts of things. They were kind of 3D printing sugar. They were working for the movie industry, all these kind of things. They were working for NASA and so on. And that seems to me the way that we should be opening up towards the possibility of an imaginative deployment of those particular skills, because the skills are very marketable. The architectural skills are very marketable.
Yeah. Like this profession needs repetition. You cannot, like most of the architecture firms, just invent something and make a system working, and then try to gain capital over that rigid system, because rigidity is less, wrong things doing in the profession, because this needs to be critic profession that needs to be clear about what the production is. But I think this is the problem, and there should be a courage that you need to make half of it fluid, the system, and half of it may be bound to some things that not change in time. Like I started, looking at Roman architecture and then the cities and the urban changes over the time and history. This won't change. I think won't change. Don't be affected by AI or any education. But other things, they're all changing. So I'm trying to adapt to these and then keep them in the education. So education also needs to maybe stop teaching them, but open it mainstream, and then start teaching some fluid things. No, systematic things, rigid teaching structures, but maybe in every 6 months you need to change everything. Like this is so hard, but I don't know. I think this is the way to move forward.
And also,
go ahead.
I am 40 years old and he's 45, and it is not really late to adapt AI. And also,
for most of people, yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, let me put something to you, because I was once, initially, I translated Alberti, and I was invited by MIT to translate Vitruvius, and for different reasons I couldn't go down there. But I would say we should absolutely not follow Vitruvius. We should absolutely not follow these white males from Europe. I speak as someone who teaches in Miami. We've got the whole of Latin America right down there with other ways of thinking. Often, as Ana Maria Duran Callisto tells us, there were cities in Latin America far more advanced than they were in Europe 2,000 years ago. I think that model needs to radically be shaken up. That's just my view, but I'm for iconoclasm, and especially, frankly, because most of our students today are female. So why have an icon who's a white male from those days? Anyway, listen, we've gone on beyond our time, and but this has been a fantastic session. And I just want to thank you all for your contributions. Really, incredibly useful thing. And frankly, you know, just in a way to kind of to respond to Carlos again, this is the only way that we can transmit this information unless you're at MIT or unless you've got Carlos in Singapore as your professor. You are not going to find out about these things except through a platform.
In Brazil, we'll find. Sorry.
No, I don't think so.
Don't
I
forget
disagree.
us.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree. I
Please.
think we need to have a platform where all these things are brought together.
Yeah, so I
Because
disagree with you.
nobody can straddle these ideas, and they're operating very, very, very quickly. But anyway, okay. So next week, we've got a George Guida and his team, and it's going to be amazing. Carla Saldana Ochoa, and also we've got Smaro Katsanglu, and so on. And after that, we've got a text to video series session, which is going to be astonishing as well. And then on to Tim Fu and so on. So all of these sessions collectively are trying to shake things up. They're trying to provoke people to really rethink things. So thank you for all your contributions today. I also want to thank the Digital Futures team behind that, and Mitra especially, who's been doing all this work behind the scenes. You don't know what goes on behind this. It's all happening the whole time. And it's thank you for that. For the voices that are not heard, but they're there, and without the Digital Futures team, this would not be possible. So thank you to the whole team, and thank you above all to the contributors today. So to be continued next week. And I would just mention tomorrow there is the beginning of a series of doctoral consortium sessions that are going to be looking at AI and architecture from a more involved theoretical perspective. I'm going to be talking about intelligence tomorrow. We have Carlo Ratti coming the week after that, talking about intelligence and the Venice Biennale. We have Stephen Wolfram coming the week after that, who was a really big name in the world of computation. We have Catherine Hales coming on a week after that, and so on and so on. Patrick Schumacher, Philippe Morel, and Blaise Aguirre-Arcos as well. So there is another debate going on Sundays. So I would encourage you to follow that, the listeners to follow that tomorrow as well. So thank you for today, and to be continued. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Bye again. Bye-bye.
Ciao.